Have you ever wondered why some people grow weaker and slower with every passing year, while others seem to age in reverse, standing taller, moving, lighter, living, longer? I've spent my entire career watching patients fight against time, searching for answers in pill supplements and complicated routines. Yet the real secret to longevity might be something so simple most of us overlook it every morning. I still remember the first time I saw it. The sun was barely rising over Tokyo, and entire parks were filled with people, children, parents, grandparents moving together in perfect rhythm. No gym, no fancy equipment, just 3 minutes of synchronized motion repeated every single day. It looked almost ordinary, but what I witnessed was a nation quietly rewriting its destiny. As a doctor, I couldn't ignore the science behind it. How could 3 minutes of gentle movement transform one of the shortest-lived populations on Earth into the longest living? That question changed how I understand aging forever. Because longevity isn't about how many years we live, it's about what we do with the first few minutes of every morning, and that's exactly where this story begins. I've seen it countless times in my practice. Men and women who once moved with confidence now struggle to rise from a chair. Their hands tremble slightly when they reach for their coffee. Their backs curve a little more each year. It doesn't happen overnight, but one day they realize their body no longer obeys like it used to, and that quiet fear, the fear of fading away before their time settles deep inside. I used to believe aging was simply biology taking its course. Muscles shrink, joints stiffen, balance fades. It's what the textbooks taught me. But standing in front of patients who still had so much life left in them, I couldn't accept that decline was the only path. I started asking myself a question that kept me up at night. What if we've misunderstood aging all along? What if the difference between decline and vitality isn't found in a pill or a procedure, but in something far simpler? That thought haunted me until the morning I found my answer. It was 6:30 a.m. in Tokyo. The city was barely awake, yet the parks were alive. I saw hundreds of people moving together, arms circling spines, bending gentle jumps that looked almost playful. There was music playing, through speakers a melody from another time. Children, parents, grandparents, all flowing in unison, 3 generations, breathing and stretching as one. For a moment, it didn't feel like exercise. It felt like ritual. I remember watching an elderly man, maybe in his 80s. His hair was silver, his back straight. When he finished, he bowed to the person beside him and smiled a calm, satisfied smile I rarely see in hospital corridors. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just movement. It was medicine disguised as community. Later I learned this practice had a name, radiotaiso, Japan's national 3-minute morning exercise. Nearly 27 million Japanese perform it every day. That's close to 20% of the entire country moving in rhythm at the same moment. Imagine that in the United States, 60 million people stepping outside every morning, breathing the same air, moving together before work. The thought alone gave me chills. When I began researching, the history fascinated me. Back in the 1920s, Japan faced a health crisis. Life expectancy was just 42 for men and 43 for women. Infectious diseases were rampant, nutrition was poor, and people were aging fast. The government knew something had to change. And then came an idea that would transform the nation, not from a doctor or a scientist, but from the Postal Life Insurance Bureau. They believed healthier citizens would live longer and reduce insurance payouts. So in 1928, inspired by short radio fitness broadcasts from New York, they created a simple program of movements broadcast every morning. That moment was the birth of radiotaiso, a 3-minute revolution that would eventually turn Japan from one of the world's shortest-lived populations into the longest living. But what truly amazed me wasn't just the numbers. It was how this ritual rewired the country's culture of health. People didn't just move for themselves, they moved for one another. Parks, schools, factories, offices all synchronized by a melody that reminded everyone your body is a gift, use it daily or lose it slowly. The science today confirms what those early innovators somehow knew. Gentle, consistent movement stimulates blood flow, lubricates joints, and wakes up neural pathways that protect balance and coordination. In just a few minutes, the body releases endorphins, lowers cortisol, and improves circulation to the brain. Yet the true secret isn't intensity, it's consistency. And that's the paradox. The less effort you think it takes, the more powerful the results become over time. When I tell patients this, they often look skeptical. 3 minutes. That's barely enough time to make coffee. But that disbelief is exactly why this story matters. Because what Japan discovered wasn't another exercise fad, it was proof that the smallest daily actions can outlast even the strongest medicine. And that's where my search turned from the curiosity to conviction, because the deeper I looked into this 3-minute miracle, the more I realized it wasn't luck or genetics that made Japan live longer. It was design. When I returned to the US, I couldn't shake the image of those morning gatherings. As a doctor, I wanted to understand how something so gentle, barely enough to raise a sweat, could deliver such powerful population-wide results. so I began to study the anatomy of radiotaiso, the 13 simple movements that millions of Japanese perform in perfect sequence every morning. What I found changed the way I think about exercise longevity and even public health itself. The beauty of radiotaiso lies in its structure. Each movement flows naturally into the next, creating a rhythm that engages the entire body without strain. It starts with simple arm and back stretches movements designed to open the spine and wake up circulation after a night of stillness. This first step primes the nervous system, reminding muscles that the day has begun. Then come coordinated arm and leg motions that challenge balance and spatial awareness, stimulating the cerebellum, the same region that keeps us steady as we age. The rotations that follow target the shoulders and upper spine, areas most Americans neglect after decades of desk jobs. When these joints stiffen, posture collapses, lungs compress, and energy drains away. The Japanese solved that problem decades ago without expensive physiotherapy, just daily motion in all planes forward, backward, sideways, and rotational. Each small turn is like oiling the hinges before they rust. By the fourth movement, the chest expands. Deep breathing pairs with arm lifts to counter the forward slump that comes from screens and steering wheels. For older adults, this single action restores vital lung capacity and oxygen exchange. Two metrics strongly linked to longevity in research from Harvard's Department of Public Health. The next, set side bends, forward and backward bends introduce gentle torque through the spine, activating deep core stabilizers and improving flexibility that most gym programs overlook. What surprised me most was how meticulously balanced the program is. It alternates between activation and recovery, tension and release, like a conversation between the muscles and the mind. The 8th and 9th movements use large arm circles and forward bends that increase blood flow to the brain, creating a mild cardiovascular stimulus without spiking blood pressure. For seniors, that balances everything. Too much intensity can harm, but too little leads to decay. Then come the movements that protect independence, twisting and circular motions that maintain rotational mobility, essential for looking over your shoulder, tying your shoes, or catching yourself from a fall. In Japan, fall-related injuries among seniors are among the lowest in the developed world, and researchers from the Tokyo Metropolitan Institute of Gerontology credit much of that to daily movement routines like radiotaiso. Movement 10 body circles may look simple, but it's a masterstroke in design. It engages the vestibular system, the inner ear balance network that deteriorates with age. By gently challenging it every morning, the brain keeps recalibrating, preventing the dizziness and unsteadiness that so many of my patients fear. The next exercise, a light jumping motion, maintains bone density and cardiovascular health. Unlike high-impact training, it distributes force evenly through the legs, stimulating osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building bone without damaging cartilage. As the sequence continues, knee bends with arm lifts activate the largest muscle groups in the body, the quadriceps and glutes, while expanding the chest for improved respiratory flow. It's a brilliant way to combine strength and posture in one movement. The finale, a deep breath with a full body stretch, calms the nervous system, resets cortisol levels, and leaves practitioners standing taller, calmer, and more alert. Every element has purpose. The entire routine takes just over 3 minutes, yet it touches every vital system: musculoskeletal, cardiovascular, neurological, and endocrine. And that's the genius. Japan's scientists didn't just create an exercise, they designed a self-repair protocol for the human body. But to me, the most powerful evidence came not from the physiology, but from the psychology. A 2024 study by Kyoto University followed older adults who practiced radiotaiso at home for 12 weeks. The results were astonishing: significant improvements in dynamic balance, agility, and aerobic endurance, all from movements lasting less time than a morning news segment. More importantly, 94% of participants maintained the habit afterward. That number might sound trivial until you compare it to gym adherence rates in the US, which hover below 20% after 6 months. Why did radiotaiso succeed where so many modern programs fail? Because it removed the 3 barriers that kill motivation: time, complexity, and intimidation. No special gear, no travel, no comparison, just you, your body, and 3 minutes of rhythm. It's the accessibility that makes it unstoppable. When movement becomes a daily ritual rather than a scheduled chore, it weaves itself into identity. That's what I began to see in my own patients when I introduced the concept. Those who started with just 3 minutes each morning, simple arm swings, gentle twists, mindful breathing, reported better sleep, fewer aches, even improved mood. They didn't just feel younger, they acted younger. Consistency reshaped their confidence. And once that happens, health follows. Still, the real magic of radiotaiso isn't only what it does to individual bodies, it's what it does to entire communities. The science proves the mechanism, the culture proves the meaning. In Japan, movement isn't personal, it's shared, and that collective heartbeat is where the story becomes truly extraordinary. The first time I joined a Radio Taiso group, it was still dark outside. A thin mist hung above the park, and in the distance, I heard a faint melody drifting through the morning air. People began to gather quietly, office workers, school children in uniforms, retirees with thermoses of green tea. No one needed a coach. When the broadcast music started, hundreds of arms lifted in unison, the rhythm precise, almost hypnotic. For 3 minutes, strangers became a single organism breathing and moving together. That sense of unity hit me harder than any medical study ever could. In the United States, we treat health as an individual pursuit, your gym, your supplements, your results. In Japan, it's a shared responsibility. You don't just move for yourself, you move because someone beside you expects to see you there. That subtle social contract keeps people accountable in ways no app or smartwatch ever could. When health becomes culture discipline, turns into joy, community movement triggers something far deeper than muscle activation, it awakens belonging. Research from the National Center for Geriatrics and Gerontology in Japan shows that older adults who participate in group activities like radio, taiso, have a 40% lower risk of developing dementia and depression compared to those who exercise alone. The science behind it is simple but profound. Synchronized activity releases oxytocin and dopamine, the same neurochemicals that bond parents to children and partners to one another. It literally rewires the brain to associate movement with pleasure and connection. When I explain this to my American patients, they're skeptical at first. 3 minutes with a crowd can change your brain, they ask. But I remind them, it's not the minutes, it's the meaning. The body may respond to motion, but the mind responds to purpose. Every time those Japanese communities meet at dawn, they reaffirm something powerful. We grow older together, not apart. The longer I studied this phenomenon, the clearer it became that Radio Taiso isn't an exercise routine at all. It's a delivery system for collective healing. The country built an entire health infrastructure around it. Government-funded instructor training, regional competitions, even televised national broadcasts on NHK at exactly 6:30 a.m. It's routine, yet sacred. Modern technology rarely creates that kind of harmony. It fragments attention, but this simple ritual pulls millions back into the same rhythm. As physicians, we often underestimate the power of predictability. The human body thrives on rhythm, heartbeats, circadian cycles, breath. When people share a rhythm, stress hormones drop, blood pressure stabilizes, and emotional regulation improves. It's the same principle musicians experience when performing in a band. Their heart rates literally synchronize. Radio Taiso is that principle applied at a national scale. There's also a deeper psychological layer that American society can learn from. In Japan, aging is not framed as decline, but as accumulation of wisdom, grace, and rhythm. The morning exercise isn't about preventing death, it's about rehearsing life. Each movement says, I'm still here and I still belong. That mindset is medicine. Western cultures chase youth as if longevity were a war to win. The Japanese treat it as a song to continue. Of course, skeptics ask the obvious question, is Japan's longevity only about this routine? No, not entirely. Diet, genetics, healthcare and lifestyle all play roles. But when you overlay data from the Ministry of Health, you see a pattern. Communities with the highest participation in Radio Taiso have measurably lower rates of cardiovascular disease, obesity, and falls in seniors. It's correlation, yes, but also compelling evidence that movement plus community equals resilience. I remember interviewing a woman named Yumi in Okinawa, one of Japan's famed blue zones. She told me she's been performing Radio Taiso since she was 10 years old. She's now 81. When I asked why she never stopped, she smiled and said, because everyone else shows up. That simple statement captured the entire philosophy. Longevity is not an individual achievement, it's a collective rhythm. Modern neuroscience now supports what Yumi lives every morning. Group synchrony increases neural plasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections even in later life. It also enhances what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief that you can change your health through your own actions. When you start your day believing your body still works, it tends to prove you right. As I analysed decades of data, I realised Radio Taiso wasn't just saving bodies, it was saving identities. It preserved a sense of agency that modern medicine often strips away. When you move in unison with others, you stop feeling like a patient. You start feeling like a participant in your own story. That shift can't be prescribed, but it can be practiced. I began to wonder, could something like this work in America? Could our neighbourhoods, so often quiet and disconnected, find the same magic in shared motion? The science says yes, but it would require a cultural rewrite, a return to simple, consistent, joyful routines that remind us movement is a celebration, not a chore. That's the part of the story that still gives me hope, because behind every statistic, behind every study, there's an image I can't forget. The sun rising over a Japanese park, the air, cool, the music, gentle, hundreds of people moving as one body with one heartbeat. It's proof that longevity doesn't begin in hospitals, it begins in moments like that. And that realization led me to one more truth I never expected. Longevity isn't about how long you live, it's about how deeply you connect while you're still here. But there was still one question left unanswered. The most personal one of all: could a practice born nearly a century ago in another culture truly reshape the way we age here today? When I returned home, I carried Japan's quiet secret with me like a seed. The question was no longer if this 3-minute ritual worked, it was how to plant it in a culture that had forgotten what daily stillness feels like. In America, our mornings begin with headlines, caffeine and hurry. We sprint before our feet even touch the floor. I wanted to see what would happen if instead we started with movement, gentle, deliberate, shared. So I began introducing a modified radiotaiso routine to my patients. No music at first, just breath and flow. The first few weeks were clumsy. Some laughed, others rolled their eyes. But 3 months later, their charts told the story I'd been waiting for: lower blood pressure, steadier balance, deeper sleep. One man in his 70s told me he could finally climb the stairs without gripping the rail. Another said his morning headaches vanished. They weren't just exercising, they were reclaiming ownership of their bodies. The transformation went beyond the physical. Patients who had felt isolated started inviting neighbours to join. I remember one morning outside my clinic when a small group gathered 5 people at first, then 10, then 20. Someone brought a portable speaker. The same melody that once echoed through Japan now played under the Texas sun. People who had never met before moved together, tentative at first, then smiling. And for 3 minutes the barriers between age, gender and background dissolved. It was community medicine in motion. That's when I realised Radio Taiso isn't about being Japanese. It's about being human. It taps into a universal language, the language of rhythm, breath and shared effort. Whether in Tokyo, Dallas or a small town in Iowa, the physiology is the same. Circulation improves hormones, balance, stress melts away. The brain doesn't care where the melody comes from. It only cares that we move. As more data came in, the numbers reinforced what my eyes already knew. Even minimal daily movement triggers measurable changes in mitochondrial density, the engines of every cell, boosting energy and metabolism. Short bouts of synchronized motion increase heart rate variability, a key marker of cardiovascular resilience. And the emotional impact, off the charts. A study from Stanford found that communal movement increases subjective happiness more effectively than individual workouts lasting twice as long. But perhaps the most striking transformation is internal. When people begin each day with 3 minutes of awareness, the rest of the day feels different. Meals taste better. Conversations soften. Sleep deepens. It's as if the body, once reminded of its rhythm, carries that harmony into every decision that follows. Movement becomes mindfulness in disguise. Of course, skepticism remains. Some ask, can 3 minutes really matter in a world drowning in chronic disease? My answer is always the same. 3 minutes every day adds up to over 18 hours of intentional movement a year. Multiply that by a lifetime, and you've rewritten the body's story one breath at a time. The math of small habits is more powerful than any prescription I can write. When I walk through the park near my home now, I sometimes see small clusters of people mimicking those same flowing movements I first witnessed in Tokyo. There's no fanfare, no government broadcast, just a quiet rhythm connecting strangers. Every time I see it, I feel the same chill I felt that first morning abroad. It reminds me that health isn't something we chase, it's something we practice together. Radio Taiso taught me that the real revolution in longevity doesn't start in laboratories or hospitals. It starts in the first minutes of the morning, in the simple choice to honour the body we wake up in. Aging will always be inevitable, but decline doesn't have to be. We can age with grace, with rhythm, with strength. And maybe that's the true miracle, not defying time, but dancing with it. And as the music fades and the last movement ends, I'm reminded of a truth I now tell every patient who asks about the secret to long life. It isn't hidden in a pill, it's waiting in the first 3 minutes of your day. If there's one lesson I've learned from decades of medicine and from watching the quiet discipline of Radio Taiso, it's that strong muscles build more than strength. They build freedom, the freedom to stand tall, to walk without fear, to keep living life on your own terms. You don't need an expensive gym membership or complicated machines to protect that freedom. You need consistency, awareness, and a few intentional minutes every morning. So tomorrow, before the day rushes in, give yourself those 3 minutes. Stretch your spine, roll your shoulders, let your blood wake up before your phone does. Feel the rhythm of your breath as your body remembers what it was designed for movement. Those small choices are how you rebuild muscle one morning at a time. And if you're watching this because you've started to notice your legs weakening or your balance slipping, I want you to know it's never too late. Muscle responds to effort at any age. You can regain stability, confidence, and energy faster than you think. All it takes is starting and staying. If today's story inspired you, save this video as your reminder to move. Share it with someone who needs a gentle push to begin again. Tap, like, so more people discover it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next science-backed health guide designed for you. Before you go, tell me in the comments, what time of day will you dedicate 3 minutes to your muscles? Morning, afternoon, or before bed? I read every response because your stories shape the next episode. Together, let's make movement a habit, not a task, and build stronger muscles, stronger minds, and stronger years ahead.